Welcome back to The World with Randall Williams. Today we dive into the world of sports because Caitlin Clark was named the Time Athlete of the Year, and rightfully so. I think that she dominated the headlines for at least 6 months from pretty much March until September. Um, and even before then, I think, during the college basketball season, she was a massive name, and we all followed her from one event to the next, to the next, to the next. And so that award was deserved even more so over NFL, NBA, and MLB athletes. I think they all had their moments. Pat Mahomes in the Super Bowl, the Boston Celtics team in the NBA Finals. I think both of those teams in particular, the Super Bowl was incredible. The finals were dominant, but kind of boring. And, if you go a little bit farther towards the MLB, I think that was an incredible World Series. It was an incredible MLB playoffs. And if you were to give an award, you'd probably give it to the league of the MLB. But Kellen Clark deserved this award. She had some really interesting comments throughout that interview with Time Magazine. And that's really what I want to go into. And so before I talk about her specific comments, I want to say this is the first time that I felt like Caitlin Clark is one of the girls. And what I mean by that is like she's finding her voice and embracing, some of the controversy that, I would say unjustly has been put on her. I don't think that it's her fault that her name is constantly involved in the politics of sports or the racism and sexism that people use her name to push against the women within the WNBA. I think that her comments in June, she spoke to Jim Trotter, and I'll play the clip here.
It seems no matter what you do or what is done to you, it becomes a topic nationally, and a lot of times it becomes divisive. I wonder from your standpoint how you feel about people using your name in whatever culture wars or whatever wars they're fighting. How do you feel about that?
It's not something I can control, so I don't put too much thought and time into thinking about things like that, and to be honest, I don't see a lot of it. Like I've said, basketball is my job. Everything on the outside, I can't control that, so I'm not going to spend time thinking about that. People can talk about what they want to talk about, create conversations about, whatever it is, but I think for myself, I'm just here to play basketball. I'm here to have fun. I'm trying to help our team win. Obviously, we've won 3 games, and, we feel like we've been in a position to win a few more than that, and, my focus is on helping us do that, but I don't, pay much mind to all of that, to be honest.
How much do you think that it's impacted your ability to cultivate relationships within the league?
I think everybody in the league understands, one, we're excited about all this attention we're getting. I think we're appreciative of it. I think the league has been great for a really long time, but, my focus is on my teammates. They've been amazing. I don't think it's impacted me making relationships on my team. I'm not obviously talking to people on other teams on a daily basis. I have so much to focus on here, and getting my teammates to trust me and do all that is my main focus. Same with our coaching staff, and same with this organization. Yeah.
But I understand your focus, but I'm just curious though, are you bothered that folks would attempt to weaponize your name in whatever fight they're fighting?
No, I don't see it. That's not where my focus is. My focus is here and on basketball, and that's where it needs to be, and that's where it has been, and I'm just trying to get better on a daily basis.
But her comments there are just passive. She does not take a firm stance and just says I don't see it. I don't see it. And I think that upset a lot of people, but it supercharged others as well, where, if you are one of these people who want sports and politics to stay separate, which they never, ever have, even dating back to the 50s and 60s, 70s, 80s. There's always been sports and politics mixed. But if you're one of those people who were saying they should be separate, then that supercharged you. And it upset a lot of WNBA players. It upset commentators and, analysts. And I think that she eventually got it right. She spoke to my guy, James Boyd, who writes at The Athletic, and he asked her a question the following day where she said this.
Caitlin, I know you mentioned that, you want to focus straight on basketball. Definitely respect that. But when, just asking you directly, when people use your name for racism, misogyny, whatever, what is your response to that specifically?
Yeah, I think it's disappointing. I think, everybody in our world, deserves the same amount of respect. The women on our league deserve the same amount of respect. So, people should not be using my name to push those agendas. It's disappointing. You know, it's not acceptable. But yeah, I mean, this league is a league I grew up admiring and wanting to be a part of. Like, some of the women in this league were my biggest idols and role models growing up and helped me want to achieve this moment right here that I get to play in every single night. So just treating every single woman in this league with the same amount of respect, I think, is just a basic human thing that everybody should do. Like, you know, just be a kind person and treat them, you know, how you would want to be treated. And I think it's, you know, very simple.
And so those comments there are better. I think that they directly address some of what Jim Trotter had asked, but they don't sound as powerful, if you know what I mean. I think that sometimes when you're defending a group of people and you're, I would say, an outsider, and what I mean by that is, like, you know, the majority of the WNBA are Black women. There's some of those women identify as LGBTQ. And so with that, when you're defending some of those people, you want to sound like one of them, like you really understand it. And in those comments, I think she says the right things, but it doesn't feel, it just doesn't feel right. And I think that that's not, it's partially on her, it's partially not. It's not on her to change who she is to make people feel a certain way, because she'd never make anybody happy doing that. But at the same time, you just want to be, what I would say is, trustworthy in the ways that you say things. And so she's been in, you know, these conversations for months on end. People have been being like, oh, you know, pushing Caitlin Clark agendas left and right. And I think she's received a lot of hate for that, whether she's seen it or not. But this is the first time that in this Time magazine interview that I've seen her fully embrace who she is, the privilege that she comes with, but also say, like, I've earned everything. And so normally I have pieces of paper that I read off of, but for some strange reason, my printer was not working. So I'll read them off my phone. But she says, I want to say I've earned every single thing, but as a white person, there is privilege. A lot of those players in the league that have been really good have been Black players. The league has been kind of built on them. The more we can appreciate that, highlight that, talk about that, and then continue to have brands and companies invest in those players that have made this league incredible, I think it's very important. I have to continue to try to change that. The more we can elevate Black women, that's going to be a beautiful thing. It's the first time I've ever heard her say something that powerful, where, you know, she is the superstar in the WNBA. I think the WNBA has a lot of stars that are stars within the sport, but when you say superstar, it's a name that really transcends it, that sits outside of, like, if you say their name in a casual conversation with someone who has no idea about sports, that they would know them. And Caitlin Clark is someone who's reached that level higher than anybody else. And so for her to say this in an interview, it has a lot of power. I think that it's something, if I was a WNBA player listening to those comments, it's like, she's starting to get it. And, you know, I think with every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So there's a community of people that are upset about her saying that. Oh, well, it's better for her to get out ahead of this and say the things that she just said, because I think that, you know, her league mates will embrace her. I think that they respected her this past season, but I do feel like there was a certain level of animosity of, like, prove it, like, just prove it, like, prove that you are who they say they are. And I don't think that, you know, she was targeted, but there was definitely a chip on some players' shoulders when they were going against her, because they just wanted her to prove it. And you saw that in, like, the first 10 or 11 games of the Fever's season, where it was rough. It was rough. And, you know, part of that is because of their schedule. But these comments, I think, if you're a fan of the WNBA, this is heading in the right direction. She goes on to talk about the WNBA versus college, and I think, you know, these comments in particular are absolutely hilarious, where she says, professional players and professional coaches, this is no disrespect to college women's basketball, but they're a lot smarter. She says, I love women's basketball, but if you go back and watch the way people guarded me in college, it's almost like concerning. They didn't double me. They didn't trap me. They weren't physical, and it's hard. It's college. a lot of those women will never go on to play another basketball game in their life, and they don't have the IQ or of understanding how the game works. So I completely understood it, and it's no disrespect at all. They don't have the IQ. You have to simplify it for girls at that age. Um, and then later in the interview, she's I believe she's at a restaurant where the journalist and her are speaking, and she's watching USC play Ole Miss, and she was like, "I feel like if I was out there, I would literally have 50. The college game is so much easier than professional," and that is, it's like watching someone who has superpowers just be like, "I could destroy all of you." And it's one of the things that I enjoy watching her is just the level of confidence that she plays with, the level of passion, the level of cockiness that she plays with. It's something that I enjoy from her to see her just because she was like truly just dominant in college. There were so many times the teams just did not have an answer for her. And the defense, the way that they did guard her back then was just like puzzling when you're watching it and just being like, what is happening? Like, why aren't you guys doing X, Y, and Z? Some of the I'd say coverages that you see in the WNBA and in the NBA just weren't happening at the college level. And so she became the all-time um, leading scorer for the NCAA. So obviously she worked hard and everything else. But now, what she's saying is the game is a lot harder, which is why I think that there was it was probably a little of a step, a transitional step that she had to take before she got comfortable, and I think that came right after the Olympics, and um, that was the point of contention. Like everything she did just became this talking point that almost got annoying. Like both her and Angel Reese, and I'll go into talking about her comments about Angel a little later, but her and Angel Reese were in contention for making the Olympic roster. They obviously did not make it. And everyone was saying, like, oh, it's just such a poor decision on behalf of the USA basketball to not select her. And the truth is, do I think she was talented enough to make the roster? Yes, but there's 12 slots. And who do you take off that roster to put her on? And does she play? There were some people who were saying she should make the roster, and then even if she doesn't play, she should sit. And even Caitlin says in this, a point everybody was making was like, who are you taking off the team? And that was a tremendous point. I gave them a lot of reasons to keep me off the team with my play. And that was in reference to the 3-9 stretch from the Fever. I don't want to be there because I'm somebody that can bring attention. I love that for the game of women's basketball. I love that for the game of women's basketball, but at the same time, I want to be there because they think I'm good enough. I don't want to be some little person that is kind of dragged around for people to cheer about and only watch because I'm sitting on the bench. That whole narrative kind of upset me because that is not fair. It's disrespectful to the people that were on the team and that had earned it and were really good. And it's also disrespectful to myself. Again, A+ comment, A+ response, because sometimes silence is a good thing and sometimes silence is a bad thing. If you don't say anything, and which she hasn't in some of these previous months, if you don't say anything, then people weaponize you. They start saying things for you. And I think that happened a lot during Caitlin Clark's over the course of the year period. And so this comment in particular protects the players. Like a lot of these comments protect the WNBA, they protect her league mates, because I think so much of this year was just Caitlin Clark versus the WNBA, not Caitlin Clark being in the WNBA. And in reference to the Olympics, there was the conversation about who you take off the team, and then there was the conversation about she should just sit on the bench, and because that would pack out the arenas. And look, like both of those are arguments. I think the second one is a little silly. You don't put Caitlin Clark on the bench; it would be sort of embarrassing. And similar to the thing that happened with Jason Tatum this summer, where he wins the NBA Finals and then he doesn't play that much. And I don't think Caitlin Clark would have been as bad because, she was a rookie and she hadn't won anything at the WNBA level, but we all saw the talent. And everyone who would have been in that arena who maybe, you know, hadn't watched as much basketball or hadn't listened to interviews from USA basketball coaches or players would at some point wanted her to play. And it would have been this awkward thing where if they lose, if they don't win the gold medal, then everyone's sitting around asking, oh, well, if you would have played Caitlin Clark, then, this could have happened and that would have happened. And it was just annoying. And so to see her kind of acknowledge that and say, like, I want to be on the team when they feel like I should be nominated to be on the team, when I want to be selected on the team. That was I was happy with that. I was happy with that. And then she goes on to talk about, I guess I'll talk about the Angel Reese backlash. Angel Reese, she beats Caitlin Clark in the national championship game in 2023. And she goes on to go like, I think it was this. And then she points at the ring for the ring finger. And this is when like that racial conversation started with Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese. And she says, I don't get it at all. We're not best friends by any means, but we're respectful of one another. Yes, we have had tremendous battles, but when have I ever guarded her, and when has she guarded me? I didn't think and then she goes on to talk about the taunting. I didn't think it was taunting. It really didn't bother me. It's just like, why don't you talk about them winning or the incredible run that we went on that nobody would have thought we would have ever gone on? The only thing people cared about was this controversy, and that was really fabricated and made up. And then that has continued to be the case ever since. And she's kind of addressing like, yo, there are other things to talk about outside of the stupid shit that people keep making up about with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Like, you can have this conversation and be about the game instead of these social dynamics. I don't think it was that big of a deal. Like, obviously, what I loved about both of these things is that it was a culture clash. Like, Angel Reese is authentically herself. Caitlin Clark is authentically herself. They play in two different ways, but they both radiate passion in different ways on the court. So in that, with culture clashing, it just got too far with what people were making this about. And we saw that later with DiJonai Carrington, like, who's an excellent defender in the WNBA and obviously someone who battled against Caitlin Clark this year. But Caitlin Clark addresses that too, where there's a play, I want to say it was at the end of the WNBA season where DiJonai Carrington swipes for the ball. I think she swipes for the ball, accidentally pokes Caitlin Clark in the eye, and it turned into this whole thing where everyone, I believe her name is Christine Brennan, and she asks DiJonai Carrington a question that makes it seem like DiJonai was targeting Caitlin Clark. And Caitlin says, never once did that cross my mind that it was on purpose. I've been poked in the eye many times playing basketball. It happens. If that would have happened in the WNBA, do you think people, or excuse me, if that would have happened in the NBA, do you think people would have shown up the next day and been like, hey, Tyrese Halliburton, did you poke Steph Curry in the eye on purpose, she says? Well, Clark says she wasn't aware that the union was going to reprimand Brennan. She supports his decision. That whole line of questioning that Carrington got was not appropriate, and I did not like that. Like, it's this whole interview is masterful in protecting her league mates, even though, like, and when I say masterful, like, do I think that she could be more powerful? Of course. Like, there's always room to make things better, but I think we have to acknowledge that these comments versus the ones that happened 6 months ago are way, way better. Way better. Like, she's just talking about it in a basketball way and in a way that people can just be like, this is what Caitlin Clark said now. They're the most up-to-date comments that I think they just protect her. They protect the league. They protect her teammates. And it allows people who want to weaponize her name to not necessarily do that in the same way anymore. Like, there's not as much ammo. She goes on to say, she never thought she was targeted. Obviously, that should never happen. There was I can't remember who she was playing against. I think it was the Chicago Sky, and she got fouled. It was a flagrant one. And she said, I never thought I was being targeted. Obviously, that should never happen within a game, but basketball is physical. Your emotions can get the best of you. My emotions have gotten the best of me many times. I don't, and then it became this thing where people thought Angel Reese was cheering for the flagrant foul from the bench. I don't remember that in particular in terms of the sequencing of events. I don't remember if that happened the way that um, it was described. So she goes on to say, I don't even know if she really knew what happened. Honestly, I don't think she was cheering because somebody hit me. I really don't think that would be the case. I hope not. So she's talking directly about not being targeted. Like, I think she just views this from a competitive standpoint and saying, like, I want to compete. This is competition. And she just fully embraces the physicality, the challenge of the WNBA. And from a competitive standpoint, like, that's what you want. If it would be much, much, much worse if Caitlin Clark was a whiny little girl. Like, if she was crying over everything in the media and in post-game press conferences and begging for this preferential treatment, it would be way worse. Way worse. Her level of her ability to keep things balanced and her emotions balanced when she's at the podium to just say, like, it's part of the game. Even if she doesn't feel that way, I think is something that people should applaud, because like these culture wars that I think we have seen over the last, depends on when you think it started. If you think it started with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, which happened last year, so it'd be 18 months. These culture wars that have started over the last 18 months could be a lot worse if she was being a whiny baby, but she's not. Um, and so the last thing that she says is like about her finding her voice. And she says, I'm probably the most popular player in the league at the moment, and somebody a lot of people turn to have a voice on this type of stuff. I hope we can do a better job as a league of protecting our players and putting better resources around them to make it a safer environment. And obviously, there's only so much you can police on social media because we don't have full control over social media, but there is real responsibility. I understand that. I acknowledge that. Um, and so then the writer asks, so what's her message to bad faith actors harassing others in her name? Just stop, because that's not who I am. Like, again, like I've said this probably 3 or 4 times, but just it feels like she's finding her voice. She's finding her voice in who she wants to be, how she wants to say things, and the ways that she wants to represent the WNBA, but also remain authentic to herself. And I don't think that people are necessarily asking her. There might be people asking her to jump in the front lines and respond to everything, and that's just not her. But saying things like this that speak to the competition, that speak to the level of physicality, that respect the WNBA players, and she's always respected the WNBA players, but speaking on the social side of things, I think really garners the trust um, from players, whether they see it or not. Like, she may still face animosity from players who just feel like she is the chosen one and this trophy girl, but I think you have to tip your cap to her for what she said, what she's doing. All of those things I think are um respectable. And I'm happy, proud. Like, I think that it's a good time for the WNBA. They have sponsors coming, hopefully a CBA gets done. She'll have a shoe that will probably be massive. Asia Wilson's shoe is on the way. Don't know if um, Juju Watkins has a shoe on the way, but there's just a lot of women's basketball merchandise content that feels like it's coming. I think Caitlin Clark has a documentary on the way at some point. Um, so this interview, if this is the closing interview of 2024 for Caitlin Clark, then I think it's probably the best one yet. It's one that just encapsulate her evolving. So that is what I would say about this Caitlin Clark story. I want to give a shout out to the person who wrote the story. I'm going to look his name up really quickly. 1 second. But just excellent questions. I think that they asked a lot of really, really good questions. This story was written by Sean Gregory. Sean, shout out to you. I think that you did a really good job of asking good questions. I don't know if this interview involved challenging her because it seems like she was really open. But if it did, then I think you did a good job of bringing just about everything that I think people want to know about her in terms of, the social climate, in terms of how she feels about the competition, the Olympic conversation. All of those things were answered in this interview. And I think it's a perfect way to go into 2025. We're all going to be looking forward to seeing her play when the WNBA season starts in the summertime. So great job, Sean. That's all I got for you all today. Thank you for tuning in. Like, comment, and subscribe. This is The World with Randall Williams. See you next time.